Women, we need to wake up. We need to wake up.
Men, we can't live without them, yet still can't live with them.
Men, why we hate them.
My head was pounding and my heart was beating fast. I was confused as I tried to make sense of what Mom was doing. Lying on the kitchen floor, barely holding a knife in one hand, while blood trickled from the wrist of the other. What was going on? What was Mom thinking? Why would she want to take her own life? Didn't she care that she still had children who loved her and wanted her alive, even if her husband didn't? Luckily, she was still breathing, though she seemed barely conscious. I rushed for something to apply pressure on her wrist to stop the bleeding. With my hands shaking, I realized there was no way I could handle the situation alone successfully. I screamed for help, hoping that the gatekeeper would hear. I sat by Mom's side, with Stephen watching her sleep peacefully, after the doctors battled for hours to save her life. It became too late to go home by then. Besides, Stephen and I were too scared to leave her alone, lest she woke up and tried to end her life a second time. I couldn't help but blame my dad for everything that was happening. If it hadn't been for his selfishness and stupidity, nothing would have happened in the first place. I also blamed myself for not seeing how badly hurt my mom had been and how seriously the divorce had affected her. If I hadn't walked into the kitchen when I did, she might have been nothing but a sweet memory by now. The doctor said she suffered a hypovolemic shock, which could have led to her death in a matter of minutes to hours. A hypovolemic shock is also known as hemorrhagic shock. This life-threatening condition occurs when a person loses a large percentage of blood or fluid from the body, making it impossible for the heart to pump enough blood to the body, leading to failure of other organs to function and possibly death. A person can lose blood from serious injuries or internal bleeding from organs. They can also lose excessive bodily fluids through diarrhea, severe burns, excessive vomiting, and sweating. Hypovolemic shock is a medical emergency. Always rush anyone with severe bleeding to the hospital immediately and try to stop the bleeding while in transit by applying pressure on the source of the bleeding. I'm only sharing this information because it could save a life someday. My mother is alive today because I had this information. Stephen and I were both starting to fall asleep while watching over Mom when a hushed whisper suddenly woke us up. "I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking," she said softly, startling us both.
Thank goodness she's awake. Thank goodness she's okay. I can't believe this woman actually tried to kill herself. What was she thinking? Is her husband, her ex-husband, even worth it? He's off enjoying himself with some little girl that is old enough to be his daughter's mate, and she wants to kill herself. Women, we need to wake up. We need to wake up. Let's continue the story.
"Shh, it's okay," Stephen said, leaning forward and wiping a tear that found its way down her cheek. "None of this is your fault. Just try to get some rest." At that moment, I was fighting back the tears threatening to fall from my eyes. I began to wonder whether loving any man was worth it after seeing everything Mom had gone through. She had almost killed herself because of a man who didn't care. Right there and then, I decided that no man was worth the stress. Not even Nonso. As if reading my mind, my phone rang immediately. It was Nonso calling. I hadn't spoken to him since helping him secure his bail from the police station, and I had been avoiding his calls. He must have gotten tired of calling at some point because I didn't hear from him anymore, at least not until now. Out of curiosity, I reluctantly excused myself from the room to take his call and find out what he wanted. "Don't you ever give up?" I shouted, answering the phone when I was outside in the hallway. "Haven't I clarified that I don't want to be disturbed?" "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm only calling because it's important. I should have called earlier in the day, but I've spent my whole day looking for a lawyer to defend me in court." Nancy went ahead and pressed charges, as she said she would. He paused for a while to hear my response. "Have you found one now?" I asked, finally making up my mind to be polite, after a few seconds of contemplating whether to hang up the phone. I seem to have a problem securing one to defend me. The few I've met are not ready to take up the case because they are either friends with Nancy's father or would rather not have anything to do with me. I'm in a mess and you're my only hope. So please, I need your help, he pleaded. I stood there in the hallway wondering whether to help or not. I couldn't believe Nancy had gone ahead with her threats. But as much as I was angry, I couldn't afford to let Nancy win. This wasn't about Nonso anymore. It was more about a battle between Sonia versus Nancy. A fight between the main girl and the side chick. I thought for a second about Mom and how she became so depressed. She almost lost her life because she let the mistress win. I was determined not to make the same mistake. I had vowed to teach every mistress I came across a bitter lesson for her sake. And Nancy was no exception. She must be taught that messing with another woman's man is wrong. That's why the issue with Nonso had become more of a personal battle than anything else. I took a long deep breath. And as much as I hated to, I opened my mouth to speak. I silently hoped I wasn't making a huge mistake by making that decision to support Nonso, as my lips seemingly spoke the words out of their own accord.
Sonia, you say your lips spoke of their own accord. Okay, I've got your back, Bonnie and Clyde. Well done, ma. Let's see how this goes. Next, if you're enjoying the story so far and you really don't want to have to wait till the next episode, then there's good news for you. The book is actually available in paperback and ebook format on Amazon and Seller. So you just need to go to Amazon and type in Men Why We Hate Them by Olufemi Idowu, and it will bring up the book, and you get to choose whether you want the ebook, paperback, or the audiobook.
For users that don't have access to Amazon, you can download the ebook on seller.co.
And you get to read these and many more exciting titles from yours truly. Men, Why We Hate Them.